All right, friends, as we continue this conversation on protecting children from the permanent damages of gender procedures, I'm honored to be joined now by Walt. He's a speaker and author and the publisher of SexChangeRegret.com, where he raises public awareness about the incidents of regret and the tragic consequences that he suffered as a result of unnecessary sex change surgery. Walt, welcome to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Well, listen, you're a perfect segue as to what we just heard from Representative Lundstrom. You've shared that the childhood trauma that motivated much of your impulse to publicly present as a woman. Can you just take us a little bit further into that? Our viewers and listeners, elaborate on that story for us a little more.
Yeah, my story is really like the same as all the kids that we're seeing today. I was affirmed by my grandmother. She made me a purple dress when I was 4 years old, and told me how cute I was, and did that affirming care, right? What it really turns out to be is psychological and emotional child abuse to put a young boy in a dress or tell him that he can be a girl. And, you only learn this. I'm 82 years old. So I started in 1944 on this journey. And I can tell you, the listeners, that just cross-dressing a boy has a profound effect on their psyche and the rest of their life. If that wasn't true, I wouldn't be talking about this at age 82 when it started for me at 4. My website, Sex Change Regret, I have a lot of young people who write me from 10 years old to 19, 20, 21 years old who got caught up in this stuff. And what we find is that all of them that I've worked with that have contacted me have suffered from adverse childhood experiences. The term is called ACEs. And they suffered because their parents got divorced, or there was a parent who was incarcerated, or they were passed around from foster home to foster home. And they were traumatized by their childhood. And the fact of the matter is, I was traumatized by my childhood. The issue, bottom line issue is, not one of these children needs hormone blockers, surgery, or anything else. They need trauma therapy. I needed trauma therapy. We need to identify what caused these young people to not like who they are. That's a question I always ask in the people that I work with. I've worked with thousands of them. And so once they can tell you, well, something happened to me. I was sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused. Emotional abuse is cross-dressing a boy or telling a girl she can become a man. Those are really deep-seated abuses. Some of the worst things you can do is tell somebody that you can change their gender. Dr. Biber, who performed 4,000 of these surgeries in California, well, actually in Colorado, testified in a California court that hormones and surgery are ineffective in changing anyone's gender. The fact of the matter is, no one in world history has ever had their gender changed. The only thing we're doing is feminizing boys and masculinizing girls. Nobody's ever changed their gender. We're using these terminologies like transition when nobody's ever transitioned. The fact of them, I always say when I speak, there are no transgenders.
Excellent point. And that really is the message. You can't undo what you were born to be. I mean, it really is that simple. And yet to use the term, because it is the term that is accepted, recognized, that people understand. And you have yourself, and there are others who have detransitioned. And you've shared how the medical industry literally rushed you through this whole process, the diagnosis part of it, as well as the procedures themselves. At the end of the day, is not that the exact opposite that should be taking place who are among people who are confused regarding their gender?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me say this too. I think it's important to understand that every one of these individuals I've worked with, when you boil down to what they're struggling with, it's not about their gender. It's purely about who they are and how they've been traumatized, and it's about their identity. It really isn't about their gender. So if you take the word gender out of this process and you begin to work with people like I do, and they come to me with regret, and they actually tell me I didn't have gender dysphoria, they say. I was sexually abused. Something happened. And if we had our people in these clinics today really doing gender affirming care, when someone came in saying they had gender dysphoria, they would say, well, what happened to cause you to not like who you are? And if they told them that they were sexually abused, emotionally abused, or they were traumatized, they would be excluded as a person who could get hormones or surgery, because they're not fit to go through this process until such time as they've had good psychotherapy and resolved the traumatic experience of their childhood. And what we find is once they do resolve those early childhood traumas, they don't want to change their identity. They're perfectly happy with who they are. So there's a real lesson to be learned here. The clinics now are just fast tracking everybody to hormones and surgery and not dealing with the underlying comorbidities that would prevent these children from doing these procedures. Like I say, the hormone blockers are devastating. And what we're doing is destroying an entire generation of children with this insane nonsense of hormone blockers and hormones. We got to stop it. People need to stand up. And governor in Arkansas did the right thing. No child should be going through these procedures, and we need to protect them.
All right, so how do we, the Christian community, show love and compassion for someone, especially a child or young person, who may be suffering from this type of confusion, be it gender or identity, however we want to term it? And I deeply appreciate the distinction you make between the two. But how do we need to be showing love and compassion to these people effectively?
Well, compassion is a real simple thing. It's being a good listener. Sit down like I did with an 11 or 12-year-old girl and say, what happened that caused you to not like who you are? It's a simple question. It's not going to cause them any discomfort. And you begin to probe into their life and ask them what happened. And over a period of time, if they feel safe with you, they'll tell you that something did happen. I've had parents suggest that they do this, and they find out from the child that they were sexually abused by someone that they never knew about, or they were physically abused, or emotionally. We can love on them by asking them what happened that caused them to feel like they weren't worthy of being who they are. And that's what we need to do. And we need to uphold that and keep them. Gender affirming care is loving on the people they are and not giving them hormones and surgery. That's gender affirming care.
Walt Heyer, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch, and deep gratitude and thanks to you for taking your experiences and using it to help others. We're deeply grateful. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.